All right, so let's move along with Chapter 4 and work through some examples of who hedges and how exactly a futures contract actually does reduce risk in something like price. So the first example is kind of the classic example in ag economics anyway, and that's of a farmer who plants their crop in the springtime. They have to wait for it to grow through the summer and then harvest the grain in the fall. So if the farmer sells their grain right after harvest, they're very likely going to go to a local grain elevator. And here's one that's nearby in Royal, Illinois. And these places will buy grain from farmers all farmers season, and they have publicly posted prices that the farmer can get on their smartphone or call them up on the telephone and know before they show up exactly the price that they're going to get. However, the farmer's only income for the entire year is selling that grain at harvest, and there's a whole lot that can happen between spring planting time and harvest time in the fall that can make prices go up a lot, which would be good for the farmer, or make prices go down a lot, which would be really bad for the farmer. And the farmer certainly oftentimes has interest in reducing their price risk, and maybe if prices seem favorable enough at some point during the growing season, they might decide to lock in their price in one of several ways to reduce their price risk. And first, we're just going to talk about a few of the ways that farmers have to reduce price risk before we get to hedging with futures markets, because these others are actually more commonly used by everyday farmers to reduce price risk, so I want you to be aware that those are out there. Those would be covered more extensively in other kinds of ag economics classes, but we're focused on price analysis, and those prices are usually discovered in the futures market. And so understanding how hedging happens with futures helps us understand how to interpret, forecast, and predict prices going forward. Okay, so before we get started with that, though, one of the main ways that farmers reduce price risk is they purchase crop insurance. And it's just like homeowners insurance. If your crop fails by either having a yield disaster due to a drought, or if prices are low, or both, then there are different kinds of crop insurance policies that cover different types of risk, whether it's price risk, yield risk, revenue risk. But there are plenty of products out there that are widely used by farmers, and many of those products the premiums on them are subsidized by the federal government, which has decided that the systemic risk in crop production, meaning if there's a drought, all of the farmers are going to have a disaster, that systemic risk is worth subsidizing crop insurance over, so that we don't have one bad year like 2012 result in like 3/4 of farmers going bankrupt or something like that. So that exists, and that is widely used by farmers, and that's basically all we're going to talk about for crop insurance. But it's actually a very interesting and very complicated topic if you wanted to learn more about that. Besides crop insurance, the second most widely used financial instrument by farmers is what's called a forward price contract. And this is a contract between a farmer and their local elevator, like the one depicted in the chapter at Royal, Illinois. And these contracts are just where the elevators will post every day not only the cash price at which they're willing to buy, they'll post forward bids. So they'll say, okay, I'll buy your corn today for $3.50, and I'll buy it in October for $3.55, or whatever the market is sort of right at that point. And on any day, if the farmer decides that forward price looks favorable, they can go to the elevator, write a contract with that person and with that entity, and then they have a certain window in which they have to show up with their trucks of grain, give the grain to the elevator, and the elevator will give them a check for the price at which they agreed on earlier. Okay, so this is probably, if you were new to futures markets, you might have thought they function like forward markets. But forward markets are almost always delivered on, and that's their intention. It is intended as a means for actual procurement and selling of the physical grain. And it does reduce and eliminate price uncertainty for the farmer because they get a specific price and that's it, end of story. As long as the elevator doesn't go bankrupt before it's time for them to deliver the grain and get their check, then they have zero price uncertainty in that regard. So then what happens is that by writing these forward contracts, the elevator has taken on a huge price risk, and they go to the futures market and they lay off the price risk, just like we're going to describe for farmers. Thirdly, the thing that we'll continue to discuss at length is farmers could go to the futures market directly and reduce their price risk. So let's see how that works. So the first thing we need to understand before we actually get into the mechanics of hedging with futures is the concept of basis. And basis is defined simply as the cash price minus the futures price. So your local price in your local market minus the futures price. And those are usually not the same thing because you probably don't live next to an elevator that's regular for delivery whose price would be exactly equal to the futures price at expiration. So the basis usually reflects roughly transportation costs to get from the local market to an elevator that's regular for delivery on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. We'll discuss this concept and what actually drives the difference between those two prices that gives us variation in the basis. But for now, just take it for granted that basis can vary over time. And we're going to see in the next examples how if you are a farmer who hedges with futures contracts, you eliminate your price risk in levels, but you still face price risk in the basis. So let's see how that works. So let's consider this example where on May 1st, the farmer sees that the December futures contract price is $3.80, and they say, looks good to me. I'm going to sell futures, and that's my hedge on price risk. Sometimes it's called selling forward or selling ahead. And to do that, and this is a key to remember in this class, anybody who's hedging needs to take the same action in the futures market, and that means buy or sell, that you do in the cash market later. So if the farmer is going to sell at some point to hedge price risk, they need to sell in the futures market. And by the end of the class, or by the end of today, I want that concept to be falling off the tip of your tongue. How does someone hedge? Well, if they're a buyer in the cash market, then they're going to be a buyer in the futures market. If they are a seller in the cash market, to hedge, they're going to be a seller in the futures market. They take the same action in the futures market that they take in the cash market, and that's what's going to reduce their price risk. Okay, so now let's consider two cases, one where the price goes up and one where the price goes down. So in each of these two cases, we're going to be either up 20 cents to $4 or down 20 cents to $3.60. And in this first example, we are going to consider that the price went up to $4, and to illustrate what's going on with just the futures hedge, in this example, we're going to leave the basis unchanged. So we'll come back to that and we'll illustrate how basis uncertainty can impact the farmer, but in this example, we're going to not do that. Okay, so hedging tables are usually organized in some way like this. You'll have sort of a date and then listed what action the farmer is taking, whether it's in the cash market or the futures market. What is the cash price at those different points in time? What is the futures price at those different points in time? And it's often useful to keep track of the basis. Okay, so on May 1st, we said that the farmers saw the futures price was, I see this is different now. I'm going to go back later and change this to a 375 so that this 380 matches this. Forgive me for that. The farmer sees on May 1st that the December corn futures price is 375. And we are assuming that their basis is 25 cents under the futures price. So their cash price is $3.50. Now here on the basis column, we have noted which contract we were calculating the basis against, because, there are, at this point in time, 5 or 6 or 7 different futures contracts trading, and you could calculate a basis against each of those. It makes sense to think about the basis that's nearest to the one he's going to make his cash sale on, so we're going to keep track of that December basis. So he sells futures on May 1st. On November 1st, he's harvested his grain, and he's going to make his cash sale. So he's going to go to town to the elevator, and it turns out that the cash price is now $3.75. The futures price is $4. Prices have went up. Basis has stayed the same. And we can see what is his net per bushel revenue. Okay, so let's calculate profits in both cash and futures. In the cash, he gets the whole thing. He goes, they give him $3.75 for every bushel that he brings. In the futures market, he sold at $3.75 and he bought the contract back at $4. He lost 25 cents on that. Okay, so let's put them together. His net revenue is $3.75 from the cash market. He lost 25 cents in the futures market, and that leaves him a net of $3.50. Now note, that's exactly what he saw in his cash market on May 1st when he said, yeah, this looks like a good price. And since the basis did not change, that's exactly what we should get. By hedging with futures, in this case where there was no basis change, the hedged price, the net revenue he gets at the end of the day, should be equal to the price he saw when he placed the hedge. Okay, so notice the mechanics of how the hedge works. The price went up in the cash market. That would make a farmer happy. But his hedge, while his cash position was making money, his futures hedge was losing money. Now let's go ahead to the next example and see the opposite at work. So in this example, we're going to assume that the price goes down to $3.60 in the futures market. Same thing here, though. He had decided to sell on May 1st with a price of $3.75 and the basis at 25 cents under. By November 1st, the basis is still unchanged, but in this case, the price has gone down to $3.60. With a basis of 25 cents under, that makes the cash price $3.35. And so we can come down here and do our profit calculations. He's going to get $3.35 when he sells in the cash market. And on his futures position, he is going to get $3.75, the price at which he sold, minus $3.60, the price at which he bought. And that's a gain of 15 cents. Okay, so put it together. $3.35 in the cash market plus a gain of 15 cents in the futures market. Again, he sees $3.50, the same price he saw on May 1st. Again, since the basis hasn't changed, in both cases when the price went up and when the price went down, the farmer gets $3.50 because he locked in that price. And again, note, in this case, his cash position was losing over the course of time. Price went down in the cash market, also went down in the futures market. So as he was losing money in the cash market, he was making money on his short position in the futures market. And that's always the mechanism that hedges use to reduce price risk. You take your whatever's going on in the cash market and you get the opposite profit profile in the futures market that reduces your price uncertainty. Okay, now just to illustrate cleanly how the basis affects this calculation, consider now the very unlikely scenario where the December futures price is unchanged between May 1st and November 1st. Okay, he sees $3.75 on May 1st. Growing season happens, he harvests, we get to November 1st, he sees $3.75 again. However, on May 1st, the basis against December was 25 cents, and on November 1st, the basis has widened to 50 cents under the December futures contract. Okay, so that means that the price he's seeing in his cash market is 50 cents under December, or $3.25. On this profit calculation row, the farmer's going to go to town, sell cash grain for $3.25, and the futures position will be a wash because we didn't get any price change there. So $3.25 plus 0 is $3.25. Now we see he's lost 25 cents because the basis weakened. It wasn't coming from his futures hedge because there was no price change, but the basis went down from minus 25 to minus 50, and therefore his actual revenue went down by 25 cents as well. Okay, now let's do the opposite case where the basis strengthens. So similarly, we set up with minus 25 cents on May 1st. On November 1st, the futures price is unchanged to keep the example clean. But now on November 1st, the basis has strengthened or increased or narrowed to 0. So now he's getting exactly the same price as he sees in the December futures contract. He goes to town, he gets this price, $3.75, and he is at a wash in the futures contract because price is unchanged from May 1st to November 1st. So his net revenue per bushel is $3.75, that's this price, plus 0, that's this price. And then his net revenue per bushel is $3.75. Notice that is 25 cents stronger than this $3.50 he saw on May 1st, and that exactly comes from this 25 cents strengthening in the basis. So a narrowing of the basis or an increase in the basis will always be an increase in profit to the farmer who hedged with futures. Okay, so because of this phenomenon, sometimes it's said that farmers who hedge are long in the basis. They'll always make money when the basis increases. Okay, so that concludes our example of hedging for a farmer and how that reduces price uncertainty but leaves them exposed to basis risk. There's one other thing I have here in the chapter, and that's that the farmer could use the options market, buying a put, specifically in the case of a farmer, to reduce price risk, and the option would require a premium paid up front, but it makes money if the price goes down. So using the strategy of buying a put option allows price protection when prices go down, but allows the farmer to make money if the prices go up. When they hedge with futures, they've kind of stuck at a specific price, and if prices go up, sometimes it's really hard for farmers to see prices going up and seeing their revenue profile not going up with it, because farmers are just programmed to sort of want the price to go up. It's totally natural. And when you hedge with futures, you've kind of taken that element out of it. If you hedge with a long put option, then you still get to root for prices going up because you'll make money if prices go up, but you'll have some protection against that downside risk. So for that reason, options can be a good way to reduce price risk, but it does come at a cost. You have to pay the premium on the option.